He didn't look me in the eye when he said it. Just shifted in his chair, eyes on his phone, fingers tapping like I wasn't even there. "Mom, we need the house for Maya's parents. It's just for a few months," he said. "You understand, right?" I didn't answer. My tea had gone cold in my hands. The clock ticked loud in the silence. It's a kind of silence that fills a room not because there's nothing to say, but because something enormous has already been said. It wasn't a question. Not really. It was a sentence dressed in politeness. He already knew I would leave, knew I wouldn't argue, that I wouldn't raise my voice. I never had. I remember the way the light slanted through the kitchen window that afternoon. Dust hanging in the air like suspended time. His car keys were already on the counter. There was a suitcase in the hallway I hadn't noticed earlier. It wasn't mine. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because that's what mothers do when their children decide something for them. We nod. We absorb. We vanish. He smiled a little, relieved. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." And just like that, I stopped being a person, became a placeholder, favor, a line to cross out so they could redraw the space for someone else's comfort. I waited until he left, waited until the door closed behind him and the car rolled out of the driveway like any ordinary day. Then I walked from room to room, touching walls like they were bruises. This house knew me better than he did. These floors had caught my footsteps when I carried him as a baby. These walls had heard my prayers when his fever ran high. The kitchen had known laughter and silence and burned rice and birthday candles. I had kept this place standing with my own quiet will, and now it wasn't mine. I went to the bedroom, sat at the edge of the bed I'd shared with his father. My late husband had built this house with his own hands. Took him 3 summers. He called it our roots. Said no matter how far the boy wandered, he'd always have this to return to. I guess he was right. The boy came back. But not for us. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe an hour, maybe 5. The sun moved behind the curtains. I didn't. My hands were still folded in my lap when I remembered where the deed was. Not hidden, not locked up. Just sitting there in the bottom drawer of my nightstand, along with old letters, a faded corsage, and a photo of me holding my newborn son. I stared at it for a long time. That signature, my name, still there. My power, quietly sleeping. They thought I'd forgotten what was mine by the time the streetlights came on. I had already called Martin Halloway, the lawyer who helped us set up the estate after my husband passed. He was surprised to hear from me. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but his voice warmed when I told him who I was. "Martin, I need to sell the house. Tonight, if possible." There was a pause. Then his voice softened. "Are you sure, Mrs. Weaver?" Yes, I was sure. More than I'd been in years. He didn't ask for details. Just told me what to gather, what to sign, where to meet. He would handle the rest. I packed a bag, just one, some clothes, my documents, my journals. Left the family portraits hanging, let the memories rot where they stood. I didn't take the wedding china or the old record player or the crocheted blanket Maya once said looked too dated for the guest room. Let them have it all. I locked the door behind me at 11:14 p.m. It was the first time I'd ever locked it without meaning to return. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not when I signed the papers. Not even when I handed over the keys. It wasn't grief I felt. It was something colder, cleaner, like rain after a long drought. They would come in the morning expecting me gone, expecting my silence, expecting the house to be theirs. But the house would be empty and no longer theirs to claim. I drove to a small roadside inn, paid for a week in cash. The woman behind the counter didn't ask questions, just handed me a key and pointed down the hall. Room 6 smelled like pine disinfectant and old carpet. The curtains didn't close all the way, but the bed was soft and the lamp on the nightstand worked. I sat there in the dark, the paper bag of my life at my feet, the echo of my name on legal documents ringing in my ears. And then I pressed record on this little voice memo app. Not because I want anyone to hear this, but because I need to say it. Because after everything I gave, Everything I swallowed, everything I lost tonight. I did something for me, and I need to remember that I wasn't always this quiet. There was a time I laughed easily. I had a house full of music, pots clanging, radio humming, my husband humming louder. There were days I danced barefoot while cooking, twirling between sink and stove with a baby on my hip. There was joy once, not loud joy, but real. We had one. Child, late, after 3 miscarriages. I remember the way I wept when the doctor placed him on my chest. Not from pain, from disbelief that something I'd wanted so long had finally come. I named him Samuel after my grandfather. But everyone called him Sam. He had my eyes and his father's stubborn streak. Even as a boy, he didn't like to be told no. If he wanted, the red truck, the blue one, wouldn't do. If he wanted cake before dinner, he'd sit quiet at the table for an hour, staring at his plate. Just to wear us down. I suppose we gave in too much. Or maybe we just mistook obedience for love. I always made room for him. When his friends came over and trampled mud through the kitchen, I didn't scold. When he asked for money for things he swore were necessary, I found a way. I worked part-time at the library and clipped coupons and reused old jam jars until the ends met again, when his father died. Sam was 21. He didn't come home right away. Said he couldn't get time off work. The funeral was small, quiet, just a few neighbors, the pastor and me. I kept waiting for the sound of his boots on the porch steps, but the door never opened. He sent flowers. Later, when he did come back, he hugged me like I was furniture, said sorry about Dad, and then asked if I'd considered downsizing, said the house was too much for me now. I said no. He didn't push. Years passed. He married Maya. I was hopeful at first. She had a sharp smile and polite words. But I noticed the way she looked around my home like it was too small, too old, too brown. She never touched the biscuits I made from scratch. Said she was gluten sensitive. She brought her own bottled water. Sam changed slowly, like a painting being redrawn underneath without you noticing. He stopped calling for no reason, only reached out when they needed something, an emergency loan, a co-signed lease, help watching their dog while they went to Tulum. I always said yes, because that's what mothers do, right? We give, even when it hurts, even when no one sees, especially then. Last Thanksgiving, they arrived 2 hours late, didn't bring the promised side dish. Maya walked in holding a tiny white dog in a leopard print vest and said they could only stay for an hour. Sam kissed my cheek absently and scrolled through his phone as I served food. They both took calls during dinner. When they left, they forgot the cranberry sauce I'd packed for them. It sat on the counter for days. That night, I washed dishes until my hands wrinkled. Not because there were many, but because I didn't want to sit in that silence. Didn't want to admit how empty the house had become, even when they were in it. I kept telling myself it was normal. Children grow up. They build lives. They forget how close we once were. But forgetting isn't the same as erasing. A few weeks later, I received a card in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo of them on a yacht. Her arms around his neck, his face turned to the sun. On the back, she'd written in silver ink, "Hope you're enjoying retirement. I'm a W. We'll come by when things settle." They never did. I started spending more time alone. Walks in the early morning. Grocery runs on quiet weekdays. I read old books again, ones that smelled like my youth. I wrote in journals I never showed anyone. Sometimes I pretended I was the only person left in the world. And it wasn't as frightening as it should have been. Then, 3 weeks before he asked me to leave, they came by unannounced. She stood in the doorway with that clipped smile. Said her parents were relocating from Florida. Said the city was too expensive. Said it made sense for family to help family. He stood beside her quiet. I asked why my house. She said it was temporary. Said they'd all be together more this way. Said I'd enjoy being around people my age. Retirement, community life, fresh air, card games, yoga. I nodded because I had no words, but something shifted in me that day. Something small, like a hairline crack in a teacup. Invisible at first. But once it's there, it's only a matter of time. I watched them leave, her hips swinging, him trailing. Behind like a boy who'd brought home bad news but hoped it wouldn't matter. It mattered. I stopped cooking after that, let the fridge go mostly empty. I used paper plates and left the good dishes untouched. Something inside me had grown still. Not dead, just waiting, so when he finally said it when he asked me to vacate, I wasn't surprised. Only tired, and underneath the tiredness, something sharper had been waiting its turn. It didn't rise with noise. It rose with clarity. They thought I had nothing left to hold, but I still had my name. Still had the deed. Still had silence as sharp as any blade. It was a Tuesday when I found the email, not on purpose. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just cleaning up my inbox, deleting old newsletters, unsubscribing from shops I hadn't visited in years. The cursor moved on autopilot until I saw the subject line. Title Transfer Inquiry 43 Millwood. Lane, I almost deleted it without opening. Looked like a scam at first. But the address was mine. My address. The house with the chipped blue shutters and the wind chimes Sam made in 5th grade, still hanging from the porch. My fingers stilled. Sender was a real estate agent I didn't know. The email had been forwarded. A chain. At the bottom, buried under headers and disclaimers, was a message from Maya's account. Hi, Rochelle, just checking in about the timeline. We'd like the paperwork expedited if possible. This property belongs to my husband's mother, but we've already spoken to her and she's ready to vacate for us. Let me know what's needed on our end. My in-laws will need to move in by the 12th. The 12th, 9 days from then. I read the email again, slower this time. My eyes caught on each word, like they were thorns. Belongs to my husband's mother, not our home. Not my mother-in-law's house. Just a legal inconvenience. A hurdle to jump over quietly. And the part that gutted me, we've already spoken to her. As if my silence had been agreement. As if my absence was consent. I didn't call them. I didn't reply to the agent. I just sat very still and read the email 5 more times, like it might eventually change. The quiet in the room was deafening. Not a car outside, not a bird at the window. Only the sound of my own breath, shallow and uneven, and the faint click of the radiator. I stood up and walked to the living room, barefoot. The floor was cold. I picked up the framed photo of Sam from the mantel. It's high school graduation. That crooked smile he had before adulthood smoothed it out. I ran my thumb over the glass, over his face, and realized I didn't recognize the boy anymore. I placed the frame down, face down. I walked around the house for hours. Not aimlessly, deliberately. Opening drawers, sorting files, gathering every legal document with my name on it. I took out the folder I'd labeled in Dove Life years ago. 'Twas meant to make things easier for Sam someday. Inside were the will, the deed, the marriage certificate, the insurance policies. Neat, clear, tucked away like a gift I had wrapped. For someone else, I thought about how easily they'd assumed I wouldn't use it, that I would step aside quietly, like furniture being moved to make space for better guests. But I had built this life. I had ironed uniforms and stayed up nights, with fever, and made sacrifices no one tallied. I had wiped his mouth and covered his shame and never once asked for repayment. And in return, they'd gone behind my back, made plans, sent emails, set deadlines. I thought about calling him, just to ask why, but what would that give me? Another shrug. Another excuse wrapped in courtesy. No, I didn't need answers. I needed to act. I took out my notebook, not the pretty journal. The ugly spiral one I kept for bills and groceries and things not meant to be remembered. I made a list. Emotional, practical, call Martin. Get updated market value. Find buyer willing to close fast. Gather IDs, scan and upload documents. Clear valuables. Book room. Withdraw cash. Each line steadied me. Not rage, not revenge. Order. I moved methodically. Each drawer emptied, each folder scanned, each step taken with the quiet purpose of a woman who had finally understood her place and refused it. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the clock tick past midnight. I sat on the edge of my bed and imagined what they'd do when they showed up with their moving van and found strangers in the living room. Would they cry? Would they shout? Would they call me cruel? Let them feel displaced. Just once. Let them taste the flavor of assumptions turned to ash. The next morning, I opened the mailbox and found another envelope. Unmarked, but I knew the handwriting, not Maya's, single quotes as inside, a printed letter to formal. To be kind, to polite, to be honest. It read like a script someone gave her. Dear Mom, we're so grateful for your generosity and flexibility. It means the world that you're allowing my parents to stay in the house. This will help everyone transition smoothly. Once they're settled, we'll figure out next steps with you, of course. Thank you again for understanding the bigger picture. Love. I folded the letter and placed it in the trash without a word. Flexibility. That's what they called it now. My silence, my grief, my willingness to vanish for their comfort. I stood at the window and watched the wind shift the branches. The house creaked the way it always did before a storm. I whispered something then, not to them, to the house. Thank you. And I meant it. For sheltering me. For keeping my secrets. For holding the echoes of laughter and lullabies and heartbreak. But I was done asking for space in my own home. They wanted me gone, so I would go. But would take everything with me they thought didn't matter. The moment I decided to leave wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors, no shouted names. No tears spilled onto kitchen tiles. It was quieter than breath. I was standing in the hallway, looking at the old nail where our wedding photo used to hang. I'd taken it down months ago after it started tilting no matter how many times I straightened it. The wall was still marked by its absence. A pale square surrounded by time-stained paint. That was me. Still there, but faded. Still present. But only as the shape of something they'd removed. And I realized I didn't want to be a shadow in my own life anymore. I had made too many quiet concessions. Given away too many corners of myself, inch by inch, year by year. Smiled when I wanted to scream. Stepped aside when I wanted to be seen. Nodded when I should have said no. And for what? So they could build a life that didn't include me, except when it needed something? I thought about the last real conversation Sam and I had, not the small talk at holidays, not the perfunctory check-ins. The last real talk, years ago, maybe. I was folding laundry. He sat on the counter, feet dangling like he used to when he was little. He told me he wasn't sure about Maya, that she wanted things he didn't know how to give. I'd listened, held space, told him love wasn't about matching lists, set was about staying. And now he'd stayed for her and abandoned me. I wonder sometimes what would have happened if I had told him the truth that day, that she looked at me like I was disposable, that I didn't trust a woman who never asked about his childhood, never learned his favorite meal, never remembered that he was afraid of thunderstorms. But I stayed quiet because mothers are supposed to support, not interfere. I thought silence was love. I see now it was permission. That afternoon, I pulled out the storage bin from under my bed. Inside were the small things no one ever asks about. The hand-stitched pillow from my mother. The letter his father wrote me the night before our wedding. The clay dish Sam made in first grade, still chipped in the corner, still holding 3 paper clips and a loan button. I held it for a long time. Then I put it back, because this time I wasn't packing for memory. I was packing for clarity. I went to the closet and took out my suitcase. Not the battered travel bag I used for weekend trips. It's a good one. The one I kept for just in case. Apparently, this was just in case. I filled it slowly. Few soft sweaters. My worn shoes. A book of poetry I'd read cover to cover 5 times. I added the documents I'd already scanned, zipped them into the lining. It's strange what you choose to carry when the weight has to matter. I stood in the doorway once the bag was full. Looked at the house not as my home anymore, but as something I was about to let go of. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It felt like removing a ring that had grown too tight in the kitchen. I scribbled a short note and left it on the fridge. Not for them. For me, you didn't leave empty. I still don't know why I wrote it. Maybe to remind myself later. If doubt came knocking, I called Martin again. Told him I was ready to finalize the sale. We moved faster than I thought was possible. A Tinua, buyer-older couple from out of state, wanted something quiet, something with history. Didn't need inspection. Offered cash. It felt like the house chose them. That night, I sat in the garden with a mug of tea, stars above me, the roses beside me. My husband planted those roses, said they were stubborn flowers. The more you cut them back, the harder. They bloomed. I ran my fingers along the rim of the mug, feeling the warmth fade. Tomorrow, I would sign the final papers. Tomorrow, the key would change hands. Tomorrow, I would vanish from the version of the story they'd written for me, and I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Something had clicked into place inside me, a kind of gentle defiance. Not the kind that burns down bridges, the kind that builds a new path. I made one last walk through the house, turned off lights, whispered goodbye to the rooms, not because they were leaving me, because I was releasing them. I stopped in Sam's old room, still had the faded rocket stickers on the closet door. Still smelled faintly of pencil shavings and dust. I didn't take anything from there. That version of him was gone, and I had stopped chasing ghosts at midnight. I slipped the house key into a plain envelope, wrote Martin's name on it in clean, steady handwriting. Then I zipped my suitcase, carried it to the door, opened it, and stepped into the cool night. Alone, but not abandoned. Not anymore. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. No calls. No notes. No long explanations. Just the key in an envelope. The bag in the trunk. The car engine humming under my hand like it trusted me more than people had. I left just before dawn. The sky still bruised with sleep, street lamps flickering against the quiet hush of morning. My neighborhood was still, almost sacred in its silence. It felt fitting. A final breath before I exhaled the life I'd held too long. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I already knew what was behind me. Years of bending. Years of disappearing. Years of smiling through the slow erosion of self. Now, I had no intention of shrinking back into anything. The motel was 32 miles away, just off the highway. Not much to look at from the outside, white paint chipped at the corners. Faded vacancy sign blinking like it had forgotten how to stay lit. But when the woman at the front desk handed me the key, she smiled like I mattered. Called me ma'am without rushing the word. Asked if I needed anything else before she slid the paper toward me. I told her I just needed quiet. Room 12 smelled like lemon polish and thyme. One bed, a wooden chair by the window, a dresser with a cracked mirror and a lamp that buzzed when you touched the switch too fast. It wasn't home, but it was mine. For now, I placed the suitcase by the wall, sat on the edge of the bed, closed my eyes. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. Later that afternoon, I walked to the small diner across the lot, ordered coffee and a slice of lemon pie. The waitress had gray roots and eyes like she'd seen too much, but still managed to call everyone sweetheart without sounding tired of it. She didn't ask me where I was from. I didn't offer. And still, sitting there with my coffee, I felt more seen than I had in my own house for the last 10 years. That night, pulled out the manila folder and looked at the deed. My name in black ink. No co-signers. No witnesses needed anymore. Just me. I folded it back up, slid it under the mattress, Not because I was afraid someone would steal it, but because I needed to feel it beneath me. It's the weight of what was mine. The proof that I had not been erased. I kept the lights low. Let the TV mumble soft background noise while I opened my notebook. I started a new list. Change bank account address, cancel landline forward mail to P.O. Box, store documents in safe deposit. Buy new SIM card, book appointment for small storage unit. It felt like laying bricks. Not glamorous. Not emotional. Just the slow, steady labor of reclaiming a foundation. There was no revenge in it. No anger left to burn. Just the cool clarity of someone finally awake in their own life. A few days later, Martin called. The sale had gone through. Funds transferred. Clean break. He asked if I wanted the final paperwork mailed or picked up in person. I told him to hold it at his office. I wasn't ready to look at the closing statement yet. He didn't push. I appreciated that. That night, I deleted the family group chat from my phone. It had been silent for days anyway. The last message was from Maya asking for the Wi-Fi password. I smiled a little. They were probably standing on the porch by now, puzzled. Maybe they thought I'd left early. Maybe they assumed I'd be back later to explain. But the key wouldn't work anymore because it wasn't their house. Not ever. I paid cash at the motel. No credit trail. No questions. I started sleeping through the night, dreamless, restful, like my body finally trusted me again, each morning. I made tea in the little styrofoam cup by the coffee maker, sat on the edge of the bed and watched the sunrise through. The dusty blinds, no one knew where I was. No one came knocking. No one asked if I was okay. And I realized I didn't need them to. They had made it clear what I meant to them, and now I had made it clear what I meant to myself. On the 7th morning, I put on a clean blouse, pulled my hair back, and walked down to the motel office. Asked the woman behind the desk if she knew anyone renting a small place nearby, something quiet, something furnished. She didn't ask why. She just reached under the counter and handed me a flyer. A small unit above a flower shop 2 towns over. Monthly rent. Utilities included. No pets, no noise after 10. I smiled, told her it sounded perfect. I called the number. The voice on the other end was kind. Said I could come by that afternoon. I did. The space was small. A twin bed. A stove that clicked before it lit. Windows that faced west and caught the gold light in the late day. It felt right. I signed the lease, handed over the first month in cash. She gave me the keys without ceremony. I moved in that evening, and I didn't bring a single thing from the old house. Not one spoon. Not one frame. Not one piece of linen still carrying the scent of someone else's comfort. I slept with the window cracked. The night breeze felt like freedom. It started with a voicemail. I was peeling an orange by the window when I heard the buzz. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Didn't even flinch. I finished peeling the orange, picked up the phone, and listened. Sam's voice, tight and frantic. Mom hates me. We're here at the house, but there's people here. New people. They're saying they bought the place. That can't be right. You didn't call me, please? Just call me. His voice cracked at the end. The first real crack I'd heard in years. I saved the message that night. He called again. Twice. No voicemail this time. Just the empty ring. I let it echo until it stopped. Then Maya sent a text. What is going on? You never said you were selling. Where are you? Is this some kind of mistake? I stared at the screen for a long while, then turned the phone face down. No. Reply. The next morning, another voicemail. This time, quieter. He sounded tired, hurt, maybe. If this is about what we said. About Maya's parents. We didn't mean to push you. We just thought it would help. We didn't know you'd take it like this. Just, let's talk, please. I deleted that one because if they didn't know by now, no words would make it clearer. They thought my silence was surrender. It never occurred to them it might be preparation by the end of the week. They'd tried everything. Guilt, sweetness, pleading, even anger. A new message came on Thursday afternoon, Maya. Again, legally, we need to talk. If you transferred the house without informing the family, that's not okay. There are things too. Sort out, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder than what? I wondered. Harder than being erased. Harder than being spoken over. Harder than watching your own child treat you like temporary furniture. I didn't respond. Silence, I've found, is its own kind of sentence. It says, I saw everything. And I'm still walking away. I went to the flower shop downstairs that day, bought a bundle of lavender and eucalyptus. It's a woman behind the counter. Didn't ask what it was for, so just wrapped it carefully, like something sacred. I placed it near the window. Let the scent fill the room. Peace, for the first time in years. Smelled like something green and clean and untouched by anyone else's hands. That evening, the neighbor from across the hall knocked softly. A girl, maybe 25, wore oversized glasses and spoke like each word was a thought being shaped in real time. She said she'd seen me move in. Said if I ever needed anything sugar tape. Company could knock. I thanked her, didn't tell her my name. Some days I liked being just the quiet woman in to be. No history, no backstory to manage, just a present moment uninterrupted. Still part of me kept watching, not obsessively, but with that slow, steady curiosity of someone who once cared deeply and now only observes what remains. I found their social media profiles. Maya had posted a vague quote on her Instagram story. Some people are just cruel, no matter how much you do for them. No names. But I knew she wanted the world to see her as the one wronged. The one betrayed. She was good at curating pity. Sam's page was quiet. Just a new profile picture, him in front of a sunset. Alone, no housewarming photos. No smiling family in the living room that used to be mine, because that living room didn't belong to them, and they'd learned that the hard way. I heard from Martin again. He'd gotten a call from Sam. Said he sounded confused. Said he kept asking if there was any. Way to reverse things. Martin told him the paperwork was solid, final, legally clean. Then Martin asked me, gently, if I was okay. I told him I was, and I meant it. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting, I was deciding. I had chosen peace, and peace had chosen me back. I spent the weekend planting herbs in small pots on the windowsill. Basil, mint, thyme. Things that grew slowly. Things that needed care. I liked the way their roots curled into the soil. Steady, anchored. Each day. I let myself reclaim a little more. A little more silence that didn't ache. A little more space that didn't shrink. A little more breath that didn't carry anyone else's weight. And every day, their voices grew farther away. Like a dream you wake from slowly. One morning, a letter came. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Sam's just one page, folded twice. Written in blue ink. He said he didn't understand why I'd done it. Said it felt like betrayal. Said he thought families were supposed to work things out. He didn't say sorry. Not once. He signed it with love. That word so often used like a broom. To sweep up the mess without ever naming it. I folded the letter, slid it into the drawer, didn't tear it. Didn't burn it, just refused to give it more space than it deserved. They could keep spinning the story, but I wasn't in it anymore. I had stepped off the page. The days began to unfold without shape at first. No school runs, no appointments. No appointments to plan around someone else's mood. Just light through the window, the sound of the shop below opening. And the soft rustle of paper when I turned a page. I let time come to me, gently. Each morning I walked to the bakery 2 streets over. Ordered the same thing tray, small loaf of seeded bread and 1 boiled egg, still warm in its shell. The woman behind the counter started wrapping it before I spoke. I liked that. The comfort of being quietly known without having to explain yourself. I bought a simple phone. No apps, no history, just numbers I chose to keep. The silence was strange at first, but not empty. Spacious, like a room finally cleared of clutter. I didn't miss the old house. I thought I would. I thought I'd ache for the familiar creaks in the floorboards or the sound of the wind hitting the chimney. But it turns out, it wasn't the house I'd been tied to, it was the memory of who I was inside it. And she was gone now. In her place was someone smaller, maybe, but stronger. Someone who knew what to hold and what to let go of. I started journaling again, not the kind of writing meant to be pretty. Just simple sentences in the margins of the day. The mint is thriving, the sunlight looks kind today. I am not waiting anymore. It's strange how much peace there is in naming things plainly. No performance. No need to be palatable, just truth. The girl from across the hall, her name is Eliza, invited me for tea one afternoon. I hesitated, but she looked so sincere, standing there barefoot, holding a chipped mug and a sleeve of cookies. So I said yes. Her apartment was filled with plants and books and mismatched chairs, a kind of clutter that felt alive. Oh. She told me she was studying to become a counselor, said she liked living in a quiet building, said I reminded her of her grandmother, in a good way. We talked about tea, about herbs, about grief in loose shapes. I didn't tell her everything, just a little. She didn't pry, she just listened. And that, I realized, is what I'd been starved of all those years. Not attention, but witness. Someone who heard without rushing to fix, without reminding me of what I owed, without folding my words into their own expectations. We became something soft together. Not friends, not yet. But something blooming. I found a volunteer group at the library. Just shelving books on Wednesdays, helping seniors use the computer lab. They welcomed me without ceremony. Didn't care about my past, needed a warm body with a steady hand. It felt good. To be useful but not used, to be part of something that didn't drain me. Sometimes I walk to the edge of the park near my building. There's a bench under a willow tree. It's always empty. I bring my tea and just sit there, watching the dogs run, watching the world spin without needing anything from me. That kind of stillness, its own kind of healing. One afternoon, I brought a book with me, poetry collection I hadn't touched in years. The spine cracked when I opened it. Smiled at that, like it was waking up too. A boy passed by on a skateboard and called out, "You look peaceful." I suppose I did. Not happy, not radiant, just peaceful. That was enough. I've started cooking again. Simple things, stews that take hours, roasted vegetables, tea cakes with too much cinnamon. I hum while I stir sometimes. Old songs I used to sing while Sam played in the living room. I don't do it to remember. I do it because my body still knows joy, even if my heart is still learning it again. The woman at the flower shop downstairs gave me a discount on fresh stems. Said I bring a calm with me when I come in. I thanked her, bought daisies and rosemary, brought them upstairs and placed them in an old glass jar. The apartment smells like hope. Not the big, cinematic kind, the small kind. The kind that grows quietly, in corners when no one is watching. One evening, I received a postcard in the mail. No name, just an image of a lighthouse and the words, "Hope you're well, always thinking of you." I didn't need to wonder who it was from. I tore it in half. Not out of spite, but because I didn't want to keep anything that came with silence wrapped in guilt. I am no longer a storage room for other people's regrets. Sometimes I pass by families in the street. Mothers holding hands with grown daughters. Quote, grandfathers lifting toddlers into car seats. And I feel something ache, deep and slow. Not jealousy, grief, but even grief changes over time. It goes from fire to ember. From ache to acceptance. It stops needing to be seen. I've stopped checking my old accounts. Stopped wondering if they'll reach out again. I know they will. People like them always come back when the silence gets too loud. But I don't need to answer. I have built a life. where my name is mine again, where my space isn't something I have to earn, where peace isn't a reward, but a right. It was a Sunday when he found me. I'd just come back from the market, carrying a cloth bag of apples and soap and a new teacup I didn't need but liked the feel of in my hand. The hallway smelled faintly of rain. I was halfway too. My door when I saw him at the end of the corridor, Sam, but he looked older. Not just tired, hollowed out, his hair a little thinner. Jacket too light for the weather. His hands were in his pockets like he didn't know what to do with them. I didn't say anything. I didn't stop walking. He called my name, not Mom, just my name, like a stranger hoping I'd turn. I did. Slowly, he stood still, like approaching would shatter something. "How did you find me?" I asked. He looked down, sheepish. "Maya hired someone private. I didn't want to, I mean." I didn't think we'd actually, he trailed off. I waited. "I'm not here to argue," he said. I needed to see you. Make sure you were okay." I looked him over. He didn't seem interested in whether I was okay. He seemed interested in undoing something, pulling at a thread he hadn't expected to matter so much. "What do you want, Sam?" He flinched a little, as if the question hurt more than I intended. "I want to talk. I want to understand." He paused, then added softly, "I miss you." I nodded. Not because I believed it, but because it was probably true in the way people miss things after they've lost control over them. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, left it open behind me. If he wanted to come in, it would be on my terms. He followed, stood in the doorway like he didn't quite belong in the space, like his presence might bend the walls. He looked around. "This is different." "It is," I said. "It's mine." He nodded, eyes landing on the bookshelf, the folded blanket on the couch, the tiny herb pots lining the sill. "You really did it," he said quietly. "You left." I set the bag on the counter, took out the apples, lined them up, red, red, green, red. "You asked me to." "That's not fair," he said, but his voice was thin. Kay knew it was fair. "You told me to vacate for someone else's comfort. Without asking? Without thinking how that might feel to your own mother?" He looked down. "I didn't think it would matter so much." That sentence, I almost laughed. Almost, but I only said, "You didn't think I mattered so much." "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." Silence. Thick. Still, he walked to the window, looked out. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Maya, and me. 'Twas just, we thought it made sense. You didn't think of me at all," I said, soft and steady. "That's the part I needed you to know." He didn't respond. He just stood there, hands in pockets again, like a boy caught stealing something he didn't even want. After a long while, he turned. "So what now?" "Now," I shrugged. "Now, nothing. I have a life. You have yours. You're cutting me out." I looked at him then. Really looked. He wasn't the boy I raised, but he wasn't a villain either. He was just someone who grew up believing love came with endless allowance. "I'm not cutting you out," I said. "I'm stepping out of the role you kept rewriting without asking me." He opened his mouth to speak. I raised a hand. "Don't. Not today. You came. You saw me. I'm safe. I'm at peace. That should be enough for now." He swallowed hard, nodded. "I just wanted to say sorry." I waited. That was all he offered. A word, unadorned, no real ownership, no specifics, but still more than I thought I'd get. "Thank you," I said then. I walked to the door and opened it. He hesitated. "You're really not coming back, are you?" I looked at him, not cruel, not cold, just clear. "Would you?" He didn't answer. He stepped into the hallway, paused, then turned. "You were a good mother, you know?" I stood there holding the door, watching him walk away. I didn't cry, not for him, not for the past. I closed the door slowly, turned the lock with calm fingers. Then I went back to the counter, finished arranging the apples, set the kettle on. Later, I wrote one sentence in my notebook. He came. I didn't leave with him. I've stopped counting the days since I left. Time feels different now. Not broken into appointments or obligations. It's just light and shadow, breeze and silence. It's the way the sun moves across the floor in the morning. It's the sound of the neighbor's dog, barking twice before the mail arrives. The slow unfurling of peace when no one expects anything from you. I don't miss them. That's not bitterness. It's not a wound that still bleeds. Simply the truth that I thought would hurt more to admit. I don't miss their voices in the kitchen. I don't miss being talked over during dinners. I don't miss waiting for birthdays to be remembered or for my presence to feel welcomed instead of tolerated. I miss who I thought they were, who I hoped they'd become, but not who they actually chose to be. And I think that's the quiet tragedy of motherhood learning, to grieve the living. People ask me sometimes, in small ways, if I'll ever go back, if I'll ever forgive, if I'll reach out. I nod politely, smile a little, say, we'll see. But I know. Deep in the bone of me, I know. Some bridges aren't burned. They're simply no longer necessary. I write letters now not to send. Just a release. One to my husband, folded into the pocket of a coat I never wear. One to the version of Sam I raised, the boy who brought me wildflowers and asked if I was okay when I looked too quiet. One to myself. That one I keep on my nightstand. It says, "You are not what they forgot. You are what you remembered." Sometimes I wonder what they tell people now. When friends ask about me, when someone brings up that house, do they lie? Do they say I moved away gently or that I was difficult? Do they paint themselves as heartbroken, blindsided? Or do they keep quiet, afraid that someone might ask the question they can't answer? Why didn't you know what you were doing to her? That's not my concern anymore. I've stopped needing the last word. Now, I care more about the next moment. There's a small community garden 2 streets over. I've started spending mornings there. I prune the basil, water the sweet peas, trim dead leaves from the tomatoes. My name isn't on anything. I'm not in charge. I'm just a pair of hands in the dirt. It's enough. One of the other women, Ruth, brings an old transistor radio, plays soft music from her childhood. I hum along sometimes, not because I know the words, but because it feels good to belong to the air without needing to explain yourself. A few weeks ago, Eliza invited me to her birthday dinner. "It's just a few friends," she said. "Nothing big." Said yes. I bought her a book of poetry, wrapped it in brown paper, wrote a note inside the front cover, "May you always know when to stay and when to walk away." She hugged me when she opened it. The real kind of hug, the kind where people mean it. I stood in her little living room with her mismatched chairs and loud laughter and kind people who didn't know a thing about where I came from, but still passed me the bread with warmth. I stayed longer than I planned. Didn't watch the clock once. When I walked home that night, the stars were low, the air cool against my face. And I thought, this is what freedom feels like. Not loud, not fierce. It's just soft and earned. My old life used to feel like waiting, in a room with the door half closed, hoping someone would notice you on the other side, hoping someone would open it fully. Now I live in a space with no doors at all, just open air, and a key that only fits my hand. Sometimes I still hear his voice in my head. "My son, Nam, we need the house," so calm, so casual, as if I were a box to be moved, a chair to be folded and set aside. But I also remember my voice, the one that came later, the one I didn't say aloud but acted on. No, not this time. I think that's what it means to survive, really. Not to fight, not to win, but to reclaim your voice after years of whispering, to say no without apology, to leave not with rage, but with resolve, to begin again not for revenge, but for peace. I've made a ritual of lighting a candle every Friday night, not for anyone else, just for me. A quiet honoring of the woman who stayed too long, and the one who finally left. The flame is small, but steady. Like me this morning, I stood in front of the mirror, looked at the lines on my face, the soft curve of my mouth, the silver in my hair, and I whispered, "You made it. You're still here. You still matter. I don't need anyone else to echo it. I already believe it now, and that's enough. That's everything. The end.